What's your last name?
Dean,
And how old are you?
105,
Do you remember what year you were born?
1908.
Yeah.
I met Mrs. Edith Dean in February 2014. Despite her wheelchair and her breathing tube, I could tell she had been a firecracker her entire life.
Do you remember jumping on the trampoline at Janice's house when you were 88 years old?
Yes. Well, I did it every day, but she came home one day and I was on the trampoline and she seemed so surprised and then I told her I'd been doing it for a long time.
Mrs. Dean lived independently until she was 102 years old. Now at age 105, she lives in the Ingham County Medical Care Facility in Okemos, Michigan. Today her family visited and shared the story of her life.
My name is Paula Kraus, and I'm Edith's oldest granddaughter.
My name is Wanda. I'm Edith's only child.
My name's Ted Munn, and I'm her grandson.
Okay. I'm Janice Munn Cook. I'm Edith's second oldest granddaughter.
My name is Kathy Sinacropi, and I'm Edith Dean's youngest granddaughter.
Mrs. Dean was born in Forest Green, Missouri, about 120 miles outside of Kansas City. Her granddaughter Paula Kraus said her grandmother had a tough beginning.
Her focus in life was taking care of all of us and making sure that we all had more than what she had. She had a rough growing up.
What happened to your mom?
She just left.
Do you know why?
Yes, I think it's because my father drank a lot.
I don't remember how old I was when I found out that they had been farmed out as children, and one place, they didn't like her name, so they changed it at 10 years old.
But Mrs. Dean was able to rise above her roots. She married and had a daughter named Wanda. Her first marriage led to divorce. Several years later, she married Kenneth Dean, who became Wanda's stepfather. Wanda, who by the way is 88 years old, describes the Depression, an era that she too experienced.
I was about 5 years old when my mother and father divorced. But my mom and I went down the road. It was a depression at its worst. And there was no money for anything but food, and sometimes that was scarce.
Mrs. Dean lived through events that I've only experienced through textbooks and the internet. World War I, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Vietnam War, and the invention of the computer. In the 1950s, she met a young senator named John F. Kennedy. Granddaughter Paula Kraus remembers that story.
Rita Burnham was a gorgeous woman, and so was my grandmother. And Rita knew the city manager, and he suggested that she come down and have lunch and bring a pretty friend.
At the city library, they had a meeting for President Kennedy, and we were introduced to him, sort of different from the other people.
And they pulled up in this convertible, these two gorgeous ladies, and made quite an impression on Jack Kennedy. She, when she told me the story, she'd giggle and she said, yeah, he was kind of a sly dog.
In her later years, Mrs. Dean worked as a swimming teacher and taught children of all ages to swim in Kansas City. Her grandson Ted Munn remembers his grandmother's active lifestyle.
She's just been active her whole life. When she was an instructor for the Red Cross for almost 50 years, when she was in her 60s, she did a 5-mile swim for some kind of award patch, and she taught like 10,000 kids how to swim or something ridiculous like that.
Oh, well, the swimming was pretty important to me, but I taught a lot of children to swim. I taught to blind children and crippled children, and they all said you can't do it, but I did. Oh, it's a good life. It's been a good life. And the thing I've enjoyed most are my grandchildren.
Mr. Dean died in 1980 of an incurable illness. In 1985, Mrs. Dean moved from Kansas City to Lansing, Michigan to be with her remaining family. And as granddaughter Paula Krause explains, her family is extensive.
My daughters are 40 and 38. So, and I have grandchildren that are 19, 6, and 4. And they all know her. And that to me is such a spectacular thing.
Granddaughters Kathy Sinacropi and Janice Munn Cook describe their grandmother's generosity.
I mean, she has helped every single one of us at some point in our lives with financially and with taking care of kids. But you know, she was amazing. And when she did move up here, she bought every diaper, every bit of formula for our children. She was always doing that. And I would tell my friends, and they said, she's like a fairy godmother. And I said, that's exactly. I mean, she really was. What makes you happy?
That I have such a good family. I find out if you try to help people, someone you know needs the help, and you extend a helping hand, it always comes back to you.
Mrs. Dean passed away in April 2014, surrounded by her family.